Good evening, everyone. I am your host and instructor, Laney Shaughnessy, and welcome to Spindle TV, your best source for CNC CAD/CAM training videos. Spindle TV is brought to you by Digital Woodcarver, inspiring your creativity and providing you with the tools to create your own unique masterpieces. Hello. How's everybody doing tonight? Hopefully things are going well. I just had a very cool thing happen to me, so I'm running a little bit behind. It's been a great day here at the Digital Woodcarver office. I've had a truck, Dodge Ram 1500 truck that I bought 2 years ago, and I've never gotten to drive it. Just paid it off last year, but never drove it because it didn't have any blinkers or interior lights or windshield wipers or headlights or anything. And so I was told that I had to get the instrument panel replaced, and it was $1,200. And of course I didn't have the $1,200, so it sat there for a couple of years until I could get it fixed. And I found a place that would repair the instrument panel for $68. So I said, well, heck, let's do it. So I went to take the instrument panel out, and as I was taking it out, I noticed, the gentleman who helped me noticed that there was a wire unplugged in the back. And he said, let's plug it in and see what it does. And I'll be damned if we didn't plug it in and all the lights worked, all the windshield wipers, all the blinkers, all the headlights. So for 2 years, I didn't drive that truck, and it sat there. I paid it off, making monthly payments every year and everything, and paid it off and never drove it. All because I was waiting to, get it repaired, and I'll be damned, it was just an unplugged wire. So, I'm happy as anything. I just got to put my dashboard back together now, but can't believe that. An unplugged wire the whole time. Anyway. So it's been that was a good day, because at first Dodge told me it was $1,200 to fix the instrument panel, replace it basically, and then I found a place, myairbags.com, that does repairs on parts and things for $68. I could have had it repaired, and then all of a sudden, don't need anything repaired, I just had to plug it in. So, good times. Well, tonight, guys, we are going to kind of revisit that frame. And, the one we did on Monday with the models and all, it looked okay, but I wasn't really, flipping over backwards on the design. It just wasn't appealing to me. So, I kind of prepared some vectors and things, and I want to go over how I found those vectors and stuff. And I kind of redid the design of the frame, did kind of a Celtic design and things, and I like the look much better. And we're about to switch over and take a look at that. But one of the main things that we're going to do now, I haven't done any prep work on this other than changing the design from those 3D models to the kind of the Celtic knot look. Tonight we're going to talk about if we were carving this as not one solid piece. If we were cutting the parts out and assembling them, after they were machined and everything, how would we draw the vectors and create for the joinery? And so that's what we're going to kind of visit on. And there's no prep work, so everything we do tonight is kind of, off the cuff. Taking and examining what needs to be done and creating the vectors and the tool paths and everything. Wayne, no hat tonight. I got a haircut. I only wear a hat when I need a haircut, and so I was able to get a haircut. And so no hat tonight. No hat tonight. All right, let's switch over to the Vectric window, and let's take a look at what we came up with here, what I've got for the frame and everything. And so what I've got here is I've got a kind of a Celtic look. It's a raised design. If I turn off the color, let's see if I can turn off the color here. we'll see if we kind of zoom in on the design a bit. We've got this raised V-carve, basically. It's a V-carve toolpath with a flat depth and things. And I want to talk to you about the vectors that I pulled in to create the design and what I did. But again, what I want to do is I want to take this piece that right now is cut out as a whole frame out of a solid panel. And I want to explore if we took and broke this down into 4 parts. Our rails and stiles, if we broke it down and we did a little bit of half lap joinery on the back to, you know, assemble this piece, how would we approach it to create those parts and things? So we're going to be drawing some vectors. We're going to be looking at joinery techniques in this class. And again, nothing's been prepared. I haven't even kind of looked at what I would need to do to create the joinery for this. It's all kind of off the cuff right now. So we're literally doing this together. And if I put the color back on here, you can see, you know, if we had some color in the design. Oops, wrong one. Let me get my corner color set back to black. There we go. So we'd see, you know, this, you know, nice looking frame, you know, with that Celtic design, kind of that raised effect and stuff. Now, before we get into the joinery, let's go over to our 2D view here and let's talk about the vectors. And I'm going to provide these 3 Celtic vectors to you guys and girls. What basically it does, these 3 individual vectors will allow you to build a Celtic design of any size. We've got a middle strand, this part over here on the left. And do I need to change my mouse? You guys let me know if I need to change my mouse so you can see my mouse better, because I can go in and change the mouse again if I need to. But here, this little blinking area here. So this is kind of the middle strand that can be added to create any length that you want. And then we have a corner piece. And then we have an end cap. If it's just kind of a straight strand, we have that end knot. And I'm going to show you how I found them. Basically Google searching and things. Tracing the images. And then I want to show you how we blend these images together to create any length that we want. So the first thing is, let's open up a web browser and well, let's open up my file explorer first and let's see if I can show you the images that I pulled up. So on my screen here, I went through and I looked for some different flourish type designs and ended up kind of turning to the Celtic knot realm. So if I were to open this window up to a full screen here, let it load. So I was looking at various Celtic designs, and you know, I grabbed a couple of different graphics offline. This is the one I ultimately ended up using here, and I went through and just kind of you know, grabbed some. Oops, I went a little fast past that one. This is what I used for the corner design. There was a couple of corner design options, and I looked at different options and things, but the ones that were already put together, you know, really wasn't that scalable, so I didn't go with that. There was some different unique kind of tribal look I was looking at just different Celtic knots, just different kind of I don't know where the lion come into play there, but you know, I looked at different Celtic designs and things. And ultimately, I ended up working with a design that allowed me to create 3 different parts. And these parts are expandable. And what I mean by expandable is let's take this group here, and I'm going to group it together by clicking on group after it's selected, and I'm going to grab this end cap here, and I'm going to group that together. And if I come over and if I were to, you know, drag this over and line up my two parts, I could end up coming and making a copy of this one. If I hold my control and alternate key down, you know, I can pull another copy off of here and drag these knots out, and I can just start chain linking them together. Now, and I could make any length that I want, and then I could use the end cap on both ends, whatever the case may be. As you can see here on the left, that's exactly what I did. Now, when we bring, because these tracing, these vectors that you're going to get from me are closed off, when we join them together, when we bring them together, we want to make sure that there is a bit of an overlap on the two parts. So when we bring them together, we want to make sure that there's a bit of an overlap on those two parts and things. And when they're together, if once we have that overlap, then we're going to ungroup both of the parts, ungroup them, and we're only going to select the outside boundaries of the two parts, and we're going to weld them together, and that will remove the overlaps. Now there's two pieces here, three pieces. This piece here gets deleted, this piece here gets deleted, and this piece gets deleted. Now where the joining happened, we have a couple of step downs and things that we have to adjust. And so that's a very simple node editing, and we're basically going to come in and delete this point to pull that into shape. And we can adjust, I can delete this point as well, and I can turn this into a Bezier curve just to kind of, actually an arc, just to kind of, let me zoom in tight, because I just want to get a little bit of a curvature out of it, kind of straighten out that curve. Same thing down here, we can delete this point and pull that curve back into shape. And we would do that all the way down. We'd get our, we'd get our curves cleaned up. So on these two nodes here, we can delete those by hitting the delete key or right clicking and hitting delete. Turn this to an arc, and we can pull that arc up ever so slightly just to finish off that, that curve. And so we would just come down to the other side. Same thing on the other side. Excuse me 1 second. I want to make sure that that you guys aren't trying to okay. All right, so that sorry for the interruption. So on here, once again, we would come in and we clean up these three lines here on where we join those together. And so let me get out of this and select the, there's my node editing. And it would be a matter of just deleting this point and kind of pulling this one just ever so slightly around, and this one ever so slightly up to kind of clean that up. And then we would have the two knots down here, or the two lines down here. And again, we would just delete that little peak, and if we wanted to, we can kind of pull that, get that curve right. And for the last one, we got 2 points there, so let me actually get on. we would delete this point, and we would actually delete this point as well. Zoom in if it doesn't let you get on those nodes because of the anchor. You know, zoom in so you can get rid of that point. And just kind of smooth out that line. And once we do that, then now we have, sorry, we have some people walking in front of the property, so the dogs are barking. So now we can, you know, group that together, and we could continue daisy chaining this together in a sense, and we could finish off with the end cap. Now, before you do this, make sure you make copies instead of using your originals. Keep your originals intact, because right now if I wanted to put the end cap on the end of this, well, I don't have my original anymore, right? I just blended it together with this one, and so I don't have an end cap. So now I'm kind of forced to Control Z to undo everything that I just did, and kind of get back to this point before the welding, so that I can come in here and make a copy. So I'm gonna hold the control key down and pull down a copy, you know, and you want to do that. Keep your originals intact. Work off copies for them. Don't do like I just did and use your originals, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, I done tied them together. And once again, now that we've done that, we can just go back and weld those two parts, delete the three little intersections here, and then go back and clean up those nodes again like we just did. I don't need to go through that again. But now we have, you know, this end cap here. If I were to mirror that, basically, again, making a copy, right? So if I were to, I don't want to flip about job center, I just want to flip it to the left. I could now take this part and I could tie it in at the end here. Let me get them lined up. And once again, I could ungroup that and select these two inner parts here holding my shift key, and I could weld and then go through and delete those three inner parts. You get the routine. You know what I'm talking about. You know, so you're gonna get these vectors, so it'll allow you to create. You know, you got some. You can make some frames with it. Basically, you got a corner piece. You've got just a straight run, and then you have an end cap. So those three vectors. Yes, you could, Dwayne. You could put the originals on their own layer and make copies off of that layer. Absolutely, that would be the ideal way to do that. And so, let me take this and group it together. But so you get the idea. And all I did with these is once I had them grouped together, I went ahead and scaled them to whatever size that I wanted on the width, and then I just stretched them to the length that I wanted. You know, if I needed to do any stretching or adjusting, trying not to stretch too much. I don't want to stretch the knots out and deform it, but I had to do some stretching to get it to fit into my frame areas. Okay, so we're gonna undo. I'm just undoing everything here to get back to my three original parts. Almost there. There we go. And these three parts are going to be DXF file, a DXF file that I'm going to provide. I'm actually going to provide this whole frame design for you in the Facebook group, the whole Vectric V-Carve frame design. But I'm also going to provide the DXFs because this design, I created it into in V-Carve Pro, and for you guys and girls that have desktop, I want you to be able to open it. You should be able to open it. It's a CRV file, but I'm not sure exactly the routine there. So I'm going to just call this my Celtic DXF master layer. And I'm going to make it invisible because I don't need it visible right now. All right. Now let's talk about this Celtic Design. Well, one of the things, let me turn off the guidelines to get them off the screen, and let's take away some of the layers that I've created. So my large corner layers, let's take them away for a minute. Let's take away the center profile. The 3D, okay, that's my whole design. Now, if you recall, this was the original shape of the original frame, and we had models. Let me come in and see if I can turn on that layer 1, those models. And when we looked at the 3D view, let me close this. You know, we had those models, and that's what we used, you know, in Monday's class, you know, to create that design. Well, I liked it. It was okay, but I really wasn't married to it. You know what I mean? It just, it was a little, really nice looking, but it was skimpy, right? There wasn't a whole lot to it. And I thought to myself, no, rather than having the frame be the same size, I wanted these corner rectangles to stand out. And so what I did is I measured with my measure tool. I measured the distance from the rail here, and I did a vertical measurement as soon as my measure tool opens. And I did a vertical measurement from this point to this point, and I got a measurement of 0.5744. And I did a horizontal measurement from this point to this point, and of course, you know, lo and behold, they're the same measurement, of course. And so what I did was I drew another rectangle, and I offset it outward on these two edges that same distance. And what that did for me is, I'm going to take real quick and close my tool here. And you can see my measurements that I have over here on the left. You can see where I was measuring to get those numbers and stuff. But let me take this vector here. And let me move these to a layer. I'm going to call this layer my original. And you see all these layers that I've got. You're going to get a version of this file with everything cleaned up, named, and organized. Even the tool paths are going to be named and organized for you. I'm going to do all the work. But I'm going to just call this my original frame layout. And I'm going to make that invisible for a moment to hide those two vectors. And let's delete that one. Now, what I ended up doing was I ended up redrawing those rectangles, right? So on the large corners, I went ahead and made those offsets coming out from this edge up that 0.5745, and coming from this edge out 0.5745, and I made the four corner blocks much bigger. And one of the Celtic knot designs, which you're going to get this vector as well, is what I ended up using in these larger corners and scaling them up and everything. And so that's how I ultimately ended up with, from what we originally had, I had the models turned off, and I went ahead and put these vectors in, and I, scaled them to size, what I needed and all, and did that. Now, on the actual frame, what I was very careful about when I did the V-carve toolpath and everything is, if I get rid of these outer and inner edges here, you'll see that, and let's see if I can zoom in and zoom over. Let's see if I can move this over and let it regenerate. But on the edges, let's turn the color off so we can kind of see this without color. But on the inside and the outside edges, you know, I had that 60-degree bevel cut. And, you know, because I had that inside cut and everything, I wanted the outside of the frame and on the inside where the opening gets cut out, I wanted that beveled as well. And what I ended up doing is that offset distance, my depth of cut, by the way, was 1/8 of an inch. Okay. So knowing that, I drew a V-bit with a simple line tool. I drew a 60-degree V-bit. I drew a line from the tip of the bit straight out, no particular length, and I moved that line relative to its position on the y-axis. I moved it up the 1/8 of an inch. And by doing that, it's simulating that cut depth. And so now I was able to take that measurement, that horizontal measurement for this offset, from this point to this intersection. I was able to get that offset, that 0.0722, and it allowed me to create the vectors. This vector, let me shut this off so I have a mouse to point with. This vector here, it allowed me to create that vector, that 0.0722, and there's another inside vector here. You can see where the line stopped. I just don't have it turned on right now, but I was able to create that, and then I was able to run a profile toolpath, with my V-bit. Oops, not that one. Nope, not that one. I gotta rename these. I was able to run that profile toolpath with the V-bit, and if we look at that profile toolpath, it was just a simple 1/8 inch cut on the outside of the line with my 60-degree V-bit, and that created that chamfer for me. You know, it created that you know, that chamfer. And then I did the same thing on the inside and did a profile cut with an inside toolpath with my V-bit to create that inside chamfer. Now, when I actually cut the part out, well, I needed to know, when I did that chamfer, I needed to know what that offset distance was, that 0.0722, because when I created the final profile toolpath, this final profile cut, you'll see that the final profile cut is offset away from the line, that 0.0722. And if I open up that profile toolpath, you'll see that allowance offset away from the line. And what that did is when it cut that profile cut all the way out, let's turn on the preview. When it cut that profile cut all the way out, it literally, the edge of the end mill cut down the center of that V cut. By offsetting that profile cut outward, it cut down the center of the V cut, creating that nice chamfer on the edge. Okay. Now you're going to see tool marks here on the inside and the outside and things. The software, you know, those are my corners that I'm gonna have to kind of clean up and things, but the software doesn't do a really good job of rendering inside and outside corners and things, so you're gonna see those little anomalies right there. But that's how we got that chamfer cut. And if you notice, between the two parts, between the long rail and the corner piece, if you notice the width, and let's see if I can zoom in and get really tight here on the corner. If you notice the width, it is the same width all the way around all four sides of the rectangle, right? So in order to get that width, you know, that nice width right there on that upper lip of the cut, you know, before the chamfer and all, I had to go in and create an inner boundary. Let's see if I can kind of zoom in. I had to create an inner boundary with that offset distance, that 0.0722, to do when I created my V-carved toolpath. So this V-carved toolpath here is basically, if we open it up, this V-carved toolpath has got a 0 start depth, a flat depth of 1/8 of an inch, and 60-degree V-bit and an 1/8 inch end mill. Now notice that's the wrong one. Let's actually open up the correct one, the large corners. Let's open up the correct toolpath. Let me uncheck this one here. And if we open this up, once again, it's the same, 1/8 inch end cut and everything to create those V-carve cuts and all, to create that cut and everything. Now, the pocket cut did the, all the inside and all, so now you can see the actual tool path area that got cut, Now, I wanted, when I originally created this with the Celtic Design, this outside rim right here on the knots was very thin. So I ended up offsetting a new line outward, this pink line right here. Let me hit the control key to kind of show you where my mouse is. I ended up offsetting outward about a 1/16 of an inch just to get a nice little bit. I wanted the wider profile to be just about the same profile as the white area here on this Celtic knot. And so if we were to recreate this from scratch, we would basically have drawn out our frame. Let's see if I can turn, if I've got my layers organized correctly. Let's unturn off the toolpath here. We have our 4 rectangles that we've created, and the Celtic knot is centered within that, those 4 rectangles. We've drawn out the 4 corner blocks, which are the large corner blocks here. And inside these 4 parts here, you can see that I'm offset off of my line. I created another rectangle here, offset off. And what that does is that's what my pocket cut and my V-carve, that's the vectors that we're using, to create that toolpath. That's the 2 vectors. And what that did was that gave me that nice wide frame all the way around on all 4 sides, and it gave a consistent look. If we look at the preview one last time and we zoom in, let's turn those toolpaths off so we can see what's going on here. Let's get up close and personal with this. But you can see that constant thickness all the way even past the edges, around the corner and everything. And so we just created those offsets to be able to, when we machined these straight areas and all with that raised Celtic knot and things, when it did that V cut, I wanted the width to be consistent with the corners, that chamfer on the corner, so it's a continuous line. And so it was just a matter of taking measurements, offset measurements and everything, and determining, what I needed to do to recreate those knots and everything. And once I did that, then I created a new profile path for my V-cut, for that chamfer, and also for the final profile cutout. All right. Now, taking this design as is, here's where we're going to start from kind of scratch, and we're going to see how we would create the joinery if I was gonna take and cut just this part out here out of a long board, and then cut out the two side parts, and then cut out this other part, you know, and cut these all out four separately. I want to be able to join them, and I want to join them kind of like a half lap on the back side of the corner block. So this allows me to cut these, you know, have a long, narrow board on my table, and I can cut out, you know, or more than one long, narrow board, whatever, but or even short boards. It doesn't have to be long. But I can cut out these frame parts, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and instead of cutting it out of a full panel, you know, and having all this waste and stuff in the middle and all that stuff. How would I cut this out? How would I draw the joinery? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we're going to be doing now. Now, I want to try to get a technique here where when we're teaching a class, that after a certain amount of time, we take a break for questions, and then, you know, go back and, you know, continue and finish up, and then finish up at the end of that second part with questions. So before we get into the drawing of this joinery, because like I said, I haven't done this yet, so I don't know exactly what trail this is going to take me down. But let's take a moment here, and let's take a break for a second, and let's look at some of the questions. David Kinsey asks, can you import data from one file to another file without having 2 sessions of VCarve running? David Kinsey, you can, but basically you're gonna, if like, let's say that this is my one data here, I'm basically gonna take all of my vectors and I'm going to export them out of the software as a DXF file. That way I can come in, and if I had a new instance, and instead of having 2 instances of VCarve open, if I had a new you know, window and I was starting fresh, then I could create my new file, and I could import, oops, that was a bitmap, sorry, I could import those vectors into that new job, and you know, be able to work with them that way. So that's how I would do that. Now, if I had one window open, let me delete that. If I had 2 windows open here and I had this, I could select this and I could copy this, and I should be able to literally come into my other window and paste what I copied. Okay, if I had 2 windows open. But your question was, can you import data from one file to another without having 2 sessions of VCarve running? And so the way to do that is you would export out of your original design, and you would save that as a DXF file. And I have a folder with all kinds of DXF files, you know, for you know, picture frame profiles, router bit profiles, different designs and things. And I can pull those DXFs in to any new project and things. So that's, David, that's kind of how you would handle that. Wayne Henniker, how did you get the measurements to show on the project? Well, Wayne, we have a tool in Vectric that's our dimension tool. It's under the Create Vectors, where you add dimensions to a 2D drawing. And so in that dimension tool, we can, you know, take a length measurement, a vertical measurement, horizontal, an angle. We can even get an arc measurement. We can write in custom text if we wanted to, but you know, we would select what type of measurement we're trying to take. In this case, it'd be a horizontal, and then if I wanted to, I could come from this point to this point, and I could pull in, you know, that measurement. And I can change the size of my text height or how many decimal places I'm showing. I could show, you know, the offset distance of how far it offsets from, you know, its endpoints and things. But I could actually also do custom text. So let's say, for instance, that I grabbed this measurement here, and I came over and said use custom text, and I said, you know, this is my outer frame. I could, you know, come in and now pull in and hit my left click again to put that text in. You know, so we have, it's our dimension tool. So I'm going to undo those two dimensions there. But that's our dimension tool, and it's located on the last icon, last row of the Create Vectors menu. Now, when you're creating measurements, you can actually select to place those dimensions on their own layer, and it defaults the name dimensions. So that way you actually have a dimensions layer that you can turn on and off to show and hide those measurements. Okay. And Baron, I know you said that I answered your question. So the V-bit is actually being used as a profile bevel bit. Yeah, absolutely, like a router bit, but with the digital wood carver. So it still has, the V-bit is basically on my out. Let me close this tool here. So on my outer profile, I'm doing a profile toolpath, cutting down 1/8 of an inch deep. I wanted it the same. I wanted that bevel to be the same, and that's what my pockets were in here with this Celtic knot, was 1/8 of an inch. So I cut 1/8 of an inch deep on the outside of the line with my 60-degree V-bit. What that did for me was to create that chamfer on the outside of the cut. Now that 1/8 inch bevel from the top of that cut down to the middle of that V, because this would be a V cut, you know. I'm going to reset this back to a blank board so I can demonstrate this. So that V cut, that chamfer cut, if we were to preview it, you know, you're going to have that V-shaped cut. And let's see if we can kind of turn this around so we can see both sides of that V. Now, that distance from one side of the V to the center, that offset distance, that 0.0722 is my offset distance for my V. That 0.0722. When we created the final profile toolpath with our 1/4 inch end mill, we offset that, you know, cutting all the way through our material with our 1/4 inch end mill on the outside of the line, but we offset that cut 0.0722, that offset distance, to the middle of that V. And then when we were, by doing that, that allowed us to do that profile cut and cut that edge right off at the center of that V to create that chamfer. If I wanted a wider chamfer, I could use a 90-degree V-bit. Like if I wanted a more drastic angle, I could make the cut deeper. But we are doing that final profile cut right on the center of that V to create that chamfered edge on the board. Yes, David, you're welcome, first of all. And you could save your 3 parts and import them into other files. That 3 parts, the 3 parts of the, let me go down and my frame pieces right here. These 3 parts, you can save those as DXF file, and that's what you guys are going to get. You're actually going to get a DXF file with these 3 parts in them. And you can bring them into any job that you want to, you know, that you like, oh, I want to make a Celtic frame, or I want to make a Celtic knot, you know, in this case running along a long length, or whatever the case may be. But you can also put a corner on it rather than using separate corners. I used a different Celtic design, but you're going to get you're going to get this corner Celtic design as a DXF file. You're going to get the 3 parts as a DXF file, and that way you can use them in other projects. Okay. And yes, but we would save them as a DXF, and that's exactly the type of file you're going to get from me, as a DXF file that you can bring into other parts. All right, so let's turn off some layers here. Let's turn off our DXF layer there, and let's turn off our dimensions. And let's get into full view, and let's kind of get over into our drawing side, because we're going to be focusing on the drawing. And here's where, this is where it kind of gets challenging. Okay, we're going to create some joinery, and we're going to create some joinery on the back side of this to create some half lap joints. Basically, these parts, the 2 rails here, are going to snap into the back of these 2. Oops, did I get my stiles and rails mixed up? Well, the top part of the frame, the 2 side pieces are going to snap into this, so I can cut these 4 parts out separately. So in order to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our original vectors. We're going to take our corner here. We're going to take our outside boundary. Oops, not that one. Our outside boundary on all 4 sides. Our corners and our outside boundaries. And we are going to right click, and we're going to copy them to the other side, because we're going to be doing this on the back side. Remember, this is a 2-sided project. We're going to do all of our joinery on the back side. And so we're going to copy them to the other side. And now if I flip and transition or toggle to the bottom side of my board, you'll see that those, oops, I forgot one of the rectangles. Let me switch back over. And let me get that bad boy over there as well. Copy to other side. There we go. And oh, I gotta remember I'm flipping my board. So bear with me, I copied the wrong vector. I'm a goofball. Copy to other side. There we go. That should do it. There we go. Remember, you're flipping. When you're flipping, I'm flipping along the x-axis, so everything that was on the left is on the right, so on and so forth. So I was copying the wrong vector. All right. So now this is our 4 frame parts here, and we're going to do some half lap joinery. And basically, what I'm going to be doing is in the corners here, we're going to be doing a pocket cut so that these end pieces can fit in. Now, on the back side, let's decide right now that this top part here, let me see if I can turn off the other vector layers in the background. That way it, and let's see if I can get my, oops. Let me flip this over. Let me put those 4 Celtic knots, corner knots, on a different layer so I can turn them off. So let's take those. This is where layers really comes in so handy. I mean, I don't care how many layers you have, but you can just separate things to make it less complicated. So these are going to be my corner knots, I'll call it. And right now I don't want it visible, so I'll just turn off the visibility and turn that off. Alright, now I'm going to flip back to the other side. So Let's see here. Stand by, I gotta remember what layer I was on. What layer was I on? Hold on a second, guys. There they are. 3D pocket boundaries. 3D pocket boundaries. Remember that. I'm going to leave that one active. Actually, I'm not going to leave that one active. We're going to create a new layer, and we're going to call this Joinery. Half laps. We'll call it half laps. Half laps. Because we got to draw some new vectors. Now, on this, for these three pieces, or this one piece here, we're going to be calling that one part, right? We're going to just carve that all out of one part. We could do this where we have 4 corner blocks that we cut out. We have 4 individual knot pieces we cut out, and we half lap both of them in to the back of this knot. But I'm thinking that we just have 4 parts. We have our top rail, our bottom rail, and then our 2 stiles. Hopefully I got the stiles and rails correctly this time. I think rails go horizontal. Correct me if I'm wrong, Baron. I think you do cabinetry work. Raised panel door. It's my mind is in a blank right now, but rails should be horizontal. Stiles vertical. Am I correct? All right. So what we have to decide is if this part is going to be one piece, well then these 2 parts are going to be joined into them, okay, on both ends. So we're going to take our vector here, and let's kind of zoom into this. And now I have to decide how far into my corner block do I want this half lap? How strong do I want this joint to be, you know? And I want to come at least halfway in. Okay, I want to come at least halfway in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this vector here to get it in transform mode. Rails on top and bottom. Okay, rails are on the top and bottom. So my 2 rails, or my rails, are going to be one piece. And then I'm going to have my 2 stiles, the 2 little individual pieces and all. So right now I've got one of the stiles highlighted. And I'm going to hold down my shift key. And I'm going to come in. And I'm going to try to snap. You better snap there, boy. I don't think it'll snap. But that's alright. If I grab this, I should be able to snap that to the center. And I should be able to come in and snap that. So I actually did snap to the center. I just didn't realize it. Alright, so that's going to be our one piece. Okay. Now this is going to be important because on the back side of the rails, the top piece and the bottom piece, is where this pocket is going to be machined out so that the stile fits into it. Well, I have to do the half flap on the front part of the stile. So right now we're working just on these back corner blocks because we're doing our pocket on the back corner. And the front side of these 2 rails is going to be pocketed out. Alright, you'll see what I mean in just a moment. So let's go ahead and since I've already got this one drawn, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to delete this one, and I'm just going to mirror this, creating a mirror copy, flipping about job center, and flipping it horizontally. Just going to mirror it horizontally. Okay, that way I have my 2 parts. Now we're on the back side of the board, so we're focusing on the 4 corner pieces. Now there's 2 ways that I can approach this on the 4 corner pieces. One, I can just draw a rectangle here and create a pocket cut. I would do some little dog bone fillets, you know, because square peg, round hole kind of thing. I could look at if I took these corner parts, I could kind of... No, I think I'm going to do the rectangle. That's going to be the smartest way to approach this. So I'm going to snap on the corner here, and I'm going to draw a rectangle. And on that rectangle, I want to extend it on just this end. I want to extend it past my piece a little, so that my router bit travels past this line and I get a nice flat cut on that edge. And I'm going to break all this up in a minute. You'll see the three parts. I'll put all three or all four parts on their own layers here in just 1 second. And so with that, I'm going to take, and I am going to literally, since I've got this one drawn how I want, I'm going to mirror it. Why draw what you can copy? I'm going to mirror it horizontally, vertically, and horizontally again to create the other three parts. And so these three vectors that I've just created, all four of them that I just created, sorry, I am going to move them to a layer that, well, actually it's on the half lap. Never mind, I've got it already. See, I thought ahead. I got it on its half lap layer already. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Great. So we can see those half lap layers. All right, so those four parts are on their own layer. Awesome. Now, let's break this up into 4 pieces. All right, let's break this up into 4 pieces. So I'm going to take and I paused myself for a minute. I'm going to take this vector and this vector. These are going to be 2 parts. These are going to be the styles. And I'm going to move them to a layer called styles. Your layers are going to be all cleaned up and all. You see 100 layers going on there going, oh my God, Laney, how do you keep track of all those? And I'm going to make them red. Okay. All right. So those are those 2 parts. Now, on these 2 parts here, or this part, and this part, that and this one as well, those are going to get moved to a new layer, and we're going to call this rails. Now remember, we're working on the back side right now. We're going to have to do the same thing on the front side to make these parts, you know, one piece. But so now if I turn off all of my vectors and my half laps, get those off, my styles, if we turn those off, I got one more vector up here. One more layer turned on. Right there. Let's get everything turned off. So my 2 rails are going to be this part here and this piece. I can now take those vectors and I could bring them into another job, you know, and I could cut them out individually. I could have this board, and let's do that so it kind of doesn't, you guys kind of get what we're going here. We're going to open up another instance, and let's say that this board, again being a double-sided job, but let's say that it is 24 inches in length by, let's say it's a 1x4, so that would be 3.5 if I'm not mistaken. 3.5 inches wide, 3/4 of an inch thick. We click OK. And was that a double-sided job, Lainey? Did you set it up as a double-sided job? No. Yep. We're going to machine off the same side, flipping about job center. Okay. So I'm going to take these vectors and I'm going to copy them. And I'm going to paste them on here. And I'm going to center that on my workboard. Now, so okay, 1x4 is a little bit too thin. I went bulky with this frame, so let's make that 5.5. 5.5. There we go. Let's do that one more time because I hit cancel instead of OK. Always click OK to lock things in. Okay. Now I want to I gotta make sure that I'm gonna be clamping these, yeah, because this is gonna get cut out, so I can run on top clamps here, and I can have my alignment pins in, you know, a certain place. They don't have to be on the end. So I could actually put my alignment pin holes here somewhere in my waist area, and all. But let's get the front part of this. This should be, actually, by the way, these should be on the back side. This should be on the back side. Actually, the back and the front. So I'm just going to copy this to the other side. Okay, so we have it on the back and the front. But on the front of this rail, let's turn on the 3D packet boundaries and my corner, my large corner, and my Celtic knots. Oops, that's the small Celtic knots. I need the big Celtic knots, corner knots. Okay, so I want all of these vectors right here. I'm going to copy them. And I'm on the front side now. I can go ahead and delete this out because I'm just going to paste that new vector there. And let's center that up on the board. Perfect. All right, so my front, my back. Okay. And all I have to do is, all I need is this one, right? And I don't necessarily need the two, but remember my half laps are going to be on different sides. But since the rails are going in, it doesn't matter which side is flipped one way. So all I really need to do is draw this one part here. Now, on the back side, let's flip over. We're going to still our half laps. These two right here, only need two. We're going to copy them. And we're going to paste those. Oh, ho, ho, ho. They're not centered. Right? They're on that bottom edge. They're on the center of the blocks. So if I grab this bad boy right here, my center of this rectangle, you see I'm snapping, you see that snap line. If I grab that, I can snap to the center of my rectangle there and get those parts in the right spot. Nifty. I love the snapping tools. All right. So let's create some toolpaths off this part. let's create some layers in this board first. So half flaps is there. That's good. That's what we're gonna call them. They're basically they're in a sense they're mortises or what have you, but half flap is fine. All right, so we've got our corner knots. We've got our large corners, 3D pocket boundaries. I'm gonna change the name of that, and then the rails in general. Layer 1, don't need. All right. Now, what do we want to call this layer here? Besides 3D pocket boundaries, because it's not 3D, we're going to call it V-carve pocket boundaries. So we're going to rename that. And learn how to spell pocket. There we go, pocket boundaries. All right, let's give these some differential treatment here. Let's go with our large corner pieces. We'll make them red. Our corner knots, let's go with kind of a dark blue. And the half flaps, let's make those kind of a purple people eater. And let's see what we've got here. All right. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's create some toolpaths so you can see what's going on here. So the first thing is, first and foremost, we're going to take our corner knots, right? All of this. We're going to select this inside boundary right here and this knot and this corner and this knot. This part is going to be a V-carve toolpath, flat depth, a 0 start depth, a flat depth of 1/8 of an inch. I'm using a 60-degree V-bit for the V-carving and 1/8 inch end mill for the flat work in some of these larger areas. And this is going to be our Celtic, let's call it our, let's do it right. This is our rail, Celtic V-carve. And it's going to be a 60 DEG. Well, let's leave the bit off because there's going to be two toolpaths that get created. So we will calculate this toolpath. Okay. We can preview. All right, we can preview those knots and things. Doesn't look like much right now, right? Because we haven't done none of our nice little decorative inside cut part or any of that stuff. So we've still got some more vectors to draw, but I wanted to get that V-carve cut. Now on the back side, I want to take my pocket areas. And here's what I have to determine. My part is going to be a 3/4 inch piece of material. I'm cutting into the top part of this 1/8 of an inch out of that 3/4 of an inch, and that leaves me about 5/8. And so how deep do I want my half lap? Because my pocket on this side and then on the end rails, I got to know how deep I can cut them so that when they come together, that half lap joint, they fit nicely. So I think I'm gonna do it's a pocket cut. Before I create the pocket cut, we're gonna talk about one thing real quick. But I need to know, let's see, if I went 5/8, I'm gonna go 3/8. I'm gonna go 3/8. That'll leave me that should leave me 1/4 of material in between. So, but before I create that tool path, I need to create some rabbets. You know, you can't fit a square peg into a round hole. And so on these two corners up here at the top, I got to create some fillets for my router bit to escape from. And so in the drawing tools, under edit objects, we have our fillet tool. And we have a dog bone fillet. We have a T-bone fillet. Well, in this case, we're using a dog bone fillet because the dog bone fillets are used for creating clearance in internal corners to allow slotted pieces to fit together, okay? So I'm using a 1/4 inch end mill to pocket this out. So I want a radius of 1/8 of an inch, and I want to come over and put my dog bone fillets in here. Same thing on the other side. Now we don't need this on the bottom side because this is going to be flat. When this gets milled, this is all going to be open. This is what my part's going to kind of snap into. So we only need them on those two end corners. So he's, you know, because you can't fit a square peg into a round hole. And if we didn't do this, then that radius of the router bit would cause a, you know, a rounded corner there, and my sharp corners of my stiles wouldn't fit in there. So now that we have those, we can go ahead and create that pocket cut. And I'm going to cut to a depth of 3/8 of an inch, 0.375. And we're going to call this our half lap rail, half lap cut. And this one I know is gonna, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's a 1/4 inch end mill, so it's gonna be a 0.25 end mill. All right, so we're gonna calculate that tool path. All right, so if we preview that cut, you'll see that half lap there. All right. Now we have to go back to the front side. And remember now, see, it doesn't matter. You know, we can use this one part right here for both of the rails, the top and the bottom. They would just be rotated 180 degrees for the bottom one. They're identical, you know, so there's no need to draw two separate parts. We only need to create one of the stiles because, again, both sides are identical. But right now we're focusing on the rails. So let's go ahead. Now we got to kind of create our profile cut, right? You know, our profile cut to cut this part out. And we got to create the vectors for that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit. And let's flip back over to the front side here. I have this vector here, right? I've got this vector here that is pretty much measured out and stuff. So I'm going to take and steal that. And well, actually I'm not going to take and steal that. All I'm going to do is, so we can draw it out. You guys, I want you guys to see this drawing out. So let's just at least take a measurement. I believe it's 0.0722 on that horizontal measurement. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 1083. That's my V-cut, 1083. So that's my offset distance. 1083, that's my magic number. So let's go back over here and let's create that cut. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this rectangle here. We're going to take this rectangle here, this very far outside one, and this rectangle here, and we're going to offset it outward 0.1083. We're going to create sharp corners and create offset. Okay, to create that. Now, on this part, we're going to need this part for the, cut And right here where my rail goes, I do not need a chamfer there. Okay, I don't need a chamfer there in this little section right here. Let's draw that section out so you can see it. So this section here, I do not need a chamfer cut there because why? Because on my styles, I'm going to have the chamfer cut here already. Okay? So basically, I just need to end the cut. All right? I'm already going to have that chamfer cut there on that style when I cut that style out. So when these two parts snap together, it's going to look like it's one piece. So let's go back over here, and basically we're just going to we don't need this rectangle here. We're going to go into node editing mode, and right on this corner here we're going to cut the vector, and on this corner here we're going to cut the vector, but I need to be, even though I cut the vector there, just to get rid of that line and things, I need to be 0.1083 off of this vector, okay, for this chamfer cut. So remember, my rail is going to go in here. I need to be 0.1083 off of that. So let's grab a ruler so you guys and girls can know how to use the rulers. I'm going to snap to this end of this line here. And if I put my mouse anywhere over that guideline, I can right click and say to create another guideline, a parallel guideline relative to the original, this original here. I want to go to the right so it's a positive number, 0.1083, and create that new guide. Okay. Same thing on this side over here. I'm going to come in and grab a guideline. I'm snapping to this point here. I'm going to drag another one over on this side and snap to it as well. Oops, I didn't snap. Snap. You son of a gun. Snap to it, boo. Okay. And now I can right click, create a relative guideline again going positive to the right, 0.1083. I can create that guide. And then on this guide here, I'm moving to the left. I'm creating a new guide to the left. So it's a negative number, negative 0.183. Okay. And what that allow me to do is in node editing, on this line here, on this intersection, I can cut the vector. On this intersection, I can cut the vector. Oops, I was off. I just did an undo, Control Z. There we go. And that will allow me to remove this line. All right, I can now pull these guidelines back. I don't need them anymore. I'm just pulling them back into the ruler. And once again, I need to come over here and do the same thing. Node editing. No, I didn't snap to it. Control Z to undo. Get right on there. There we go. Now I can delete that line. Now I'm gonna take one of these rulers back, and the other ruler I'm just gonna bring over and snap to my, oops, snap to the wrong end, snap to my end there. And I'm going to make a relative move, negative 0.1083. Go into my node editing tool. And once again, mouse pointer right on where you want to cut, and cut. I can now delete that. Okay, so on these two vectors, here and here, oops, not that one, not that one either. Alright, let's do that again. Here and here, these two vectors are going to be a profile toolpath, cutting 1/8 of an inch deep with a 60-degree V-bit on the let me see here, outside of the line. So I need to make this my start point to be on the outside of the line there. So let me do that real quick. Making that start point should, you know, put it on the outside of the line. All right, so, and I might have been wrong. It might have been right to begin with, but let's find out. Let's calculate that toolpath. We want to be on the outside of the line, and this is going to be the chamfer cut 60 DEG V-bit. And let's calculate that. Now, the one thing I like about the 2D view and going into solid mode, I can see where the router is cutting. And of course, by changing that start point, I screwed it up. It was right to begin with. Even that one's cutting on the wrong side of the line. So I had this one right and this one was wrong. So let's go in and we can just very simply, instead of changing the start points, we can very simply just tell it to do inside left of the cut. And that way it's cutting on the proper side of the line. Okay. All right. Now, you know, keep in mind that we're going to have these corners and all. We might have to do some chisel cleanup work and everything, you know, when we do that final profile cut and stuff. But, so we've got our chamfer. So let's preview that cut. Let's preview that profile chamfer cut. Okay. That's creating this profile chamfer here. All right. Now let's go ahead and let's make this a little bit lighter. Let's go with kind of a maple so you guys and girls can see it. A little better. Well, we've got that chamfer cut. Now let's create the profile cut. The profile cut to cut this part out. So on this, we're going to take, and I'm going to create with these, while these are selected, I'm going to create a copy of this on a new layer, and I'm going to call this my profile rel profile boundary. Okay, and I do want it visible, and let's make it green. Okay, so on that profile boundary, I can turn off I don't need to turn anything off. I can just make sure that it's active, and I can take and join those back together. That copy that I made, join that back together with a straight line twice. Click that button twice to join that back together. This is going to be my profile boundary for my profile cut. Now, here is where we're going to be cutting down the middle of that V. And that distance is 0.0722 for that 1/8 inch cut, 60-degree V-bit. We talked about how to draw out the V-bit and get the measurement and things. So I'm going to do a profile cut all the way through the material with a 1/4 inch end mill. And I'm going to be on the outside of the line, but I'm going to have an allowance offset of 0.0722. Now, I'm not going to add tabs to this. You may want to add some tabs and things like that, but I'm not going to add tabs so I can move these parts, delete the waste so you guys can see the finished part. This is going to be my rail outer profile. I think it's only 1 T for outer. Might be 2. Profile. 0.25 end mill. I'm naming the toolpaths ahead of time because I'll send you these files too, so I might as well do it right from the beginning. So we're going to calculate that toolpath. Now, if we look at the 2D view, you see that that toolpath is offset away from the profile line, that 0.0722. And what that does is that offset, now it's cutting in the middle of that V, right? So let's go ahead and let's preview that cut. Let's see if I can get kind of zoomed in here. Let's preview that selected toolpath. Okay, and I'm going to delete this waste material. And so this will be our rail. Okay, let's flip it over to the back side. You can see that pocket. All right, we got a nice pocket for our rail, yes. So, but we got the nice pocket cut for our stiles to glue into, glue and clamp and things. Let's flip it back over here. All right. So we've got that nice cut. Now let's go ahead and draw out the rail. Now, in this case, I'm just going to, we've got everything there, or our style, I keep saying rail, but I've got everything named. Rails, large corner, corner knots, half lap rail. What I'd like to do, because I'm going to just draw this out of the same project, I'm going to name all of my next parts here. I'm going to rename all of these to, rename. I'm going to name this rail half lap, so I know it's a rail. Rail corner knots. Rail large corners. The large corners are the actual rectangular vectors. And then rail V-car. All right. So now my styles, I can go ahead and I can now shut off all of the rail vectors, and I'm going to bring in the stiles. Now I've already drawn these, so and we put those knots together. I showed you how to put those knots together. So I'm just simply going to grab the rails, but I need to grab, there's two parts that I need to grab. I need to grab this piece and all of that. And I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to paste it in here. But the most important part is the backside vector. Let's get it turned back on. This vector right here is important. I need that because that's how actual long, that's the actual length my piece is going to be when I cut it. So we are going to copy this and paste. Okay. So now on this part, know that we are doing the styles, but I am going to rotate this 90 degrees so it fits on my board. So I'm going to take and off its center, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And I'm going to center it up on my board. Now, if I was smart on this project board that I would be cutting the styles and stuff out of, or the styles, I would make this board a little wider if I could, or at least a little longer, so I could get both parts out of one piece. As it sits right now, I'm a little shy on the length, so I can't get it all out of one piece unless I change my board size. And you know, I can, since I am working off center, you know, I could I gotta remember also that I'm flipping this board over, right? You know, we're flipping this board, so remind me on that on the rails. I gotta create the alignment pinholes. Now so I'm going to put this back in the center, and we're going to call it, you know, cutting it out of there. And of course, if I wanted to, I could make this whole part longer and just have a longer frame, but this is the size frame that I've created, and so I want to stick with it. Okay, so let's create some tool paths for this. So let's do our V-carve pocket first, that inner rectangle boundary. Let's create our V-carve pocket first, and it's going to be a V-carve 1/8 inch depth, 60 degree V-bit, 1/8 inch end mill, and this is going to be my style. V-carve. Okay, let's reset this back to a blank board. So we've got that there we go. Preview visible toolpath. We've got that style V-carve. Okay. Now, on the front side of this is where I have to do the half lap for this, because remember, this part's going to snap into the back side of the rail. So we got to create the vectors for that. And on those vectors, basically, our part is this area here from this line to here. Remember, we drew our rectangle based off this, and so we got to. I'm going to draw another rectangle, but here is where I've got to be a little bit careful. When I'm doing this pocket cut, it's going to be much bigger, and I want my router bit to come and do a straight cut right here, okay, along this line, and it's important that I don't draw my rectangle just to this size. So what I mean by that is, let's draw out this rectangle, and I am going to draw it to size just to get it on the board. But now I'm going to size it up. So it's going to be sized wider on the ends, and if I hold my shift key down, I can pull both of those at the same time. And it's going to be a little wider on the outside end here. So this is going to be my oops, I held my shift key down. That was a wrong move, guys. I do not hold your shift key when you're pulling on the front. Okay, so this is going to be my vector. Now, when this snaps in, on the frame itself is the other side of this V. So this is going to be a straight cut. There's no chamfer or anything like that and all. So this is just going to be a straight cut. And now that we have that drawn out, why draw what you can copy? We're going to mirror this. We're going to flip it about the job center and mirror it to the other side. And so these two vectors here are going to be my pocket cut, cutting 0 start depth, 3/8 of an inch. Remember, we did 3/8 and 3/8, so that when these two parts come together, everything snaps together. We got a nice 3/4 inch piece. Please excuse me for 1 second. Okay, wonderful news. All right, so someone just beeped in with some news. That was good. All right, so we are going to go with this. It is going to be an 1/8 inch end mill. Sorry about that little beeping. And 1/4 inch end mill, 3/8 of an inch deep. We're going to I want to, do I want to raster this? Nah, I'm going to offset. I'll do an offset. And this is going to be my style half lap. And I know what bit this is going to be. It's not more than 1, so it's a 0.25 end mill. So might as well get that in the name. And we're going to calculate that toolpath. All right, let's preview that toolpath there. All right, so we've got that half lap. Now let's do our profile cuts. And on this, on the profile cut, we still have, don't forget now, we still have the rabbets to make for the actual picture frame or whatever the heck's going on the back side of both of these parts. So do not let me forget to draw those in. But right now we've got to create the chamfer profile cut on the outside pieces and the inside. Just the inside and outside here is all we need that for. So we need to create our vectors. Let's draw that out. Actually, I can use Yep. All right. So I'm going to just draw it out. There's no sense in, because this doesn't get no chamfer. It's just straight line here. So I'm going to take my line tool and I'm going to snap to this inside corner right here. And I'm going to draw all the way and snap to this other inside corner right there. All right. And I'm going to take that line that I just drew and I'm going to move it relative to its position on the y-axis, positive, going up 0.1083. Remember that magic number, 0.1083. We're going to move that up, and that's going to be my chamfer cut. And I want to go ahead and mirror this. Why draw what you can copy? So let's mirror this, creating a mirror copy and flip it vertical. There we go. So these two lines, we're going to do a profile cut with an 1/8 of an inch depth of cut and our 60-degree V-bit. 60-degree V-bit. We're going to be on the outside of the line. I'm sticking on the outside of the line this time, and then we'll check and see if we need to change it. And where this is going to be our style chamfers. 60 DEG V-bit. And let's go ahead and calculate that. I like to go over and look at the 2D view, and you see that I'm on the outside of the line proper on this one, but on the inside of the line here. So all I have to do is change my start point for this line. So let's go into node editing. Let's select that line and go into node editing, and let's grab this black node here and right click and say make start point. And so now I can recalculate that toolpath. I don't have to change anything, I just recalculate it. And that should put the cut on the proper side of the line. Okay? Okay. All right, now let's preview that selected toolpath. All right, that's going to be our chamfer. Okay. Now we need to cut this part out. Okay, we need to cut out our part here. And so for this, we got to figure out what boundary we're using for the cutout. And when I profile cut this, I want this part to be able to fit into that rail. So this is my boundary. But I need to be out here for the chamfer, so I need to create and redraw the boundary. So here we go. So on this, I'm just going to use my existing vectors, and I'm going to offset this vector that I've got selected. This is the the original vector here. I'm going to offset this outward 0.1083 with sharp corners. Okay, and that rectangle, that shape that I just offset and created, now I can go ahead and do some vector cutting. All right, so right here, let's go into node editing mode. Oh, I hate when my node editing mode does that. Let me select that and go into node editing. Well, you booger. Oh, I am in node editing. I'm like, what's going on there? Okay, so we're going to take, and right here on this intersection, we are going to cut the vector. Right there. Bam. Okay. Down here, right on this intersection, I'm a little off on this one here, so I need to fix that. Because I need to, this is my chamfer. I need to be right up that line. So bear with me a second, guys and girls. I got to snap this line. Sure, let me make sure of something here. Oh, okay, that's not even the right line. You stupid goofball. This is the line right here. Oh, that's way off then if that's the line. Hold on a second. I'm going to center that up on my workpiece. Oh, dadgum you. Dang ya, dang ya. I need to get right on that line. I'm gotta pull it down to that red line right there. There we go. Okay. Let's make sure this one's, oh, that one's not even in the right area. So let's pull that up to that red line. There we go. All right, we're golden again. Okay, so I've got to, while I've got this rectangle selected, I've got to cut the vector. So let's go back into node editing, and right here, cut the vector. What that will allow me to do is that part that I've just separated, I can go ahead and, while it's selected, I can just right click and delete it because I don't need that end. Okay, I'm gonna hide so you guys and girls can see this more clearly. I'm gonna hide these two vectors for the half laps, and I don't believe I created a layer for that. So let's put these on. Let's move them to a layer called Style Half Lap Boundaries. Boundary, let's just call it boundary. It's plural, but anyway. Boundary. So that way I can turn them off. So that way you guys and girls can see things a little bit better now. Okay. So we've got this part here. Now, in line with this vector at this corner, I need to cut that node. So if I go into node editing, if I need help, I can snap to this so that way I know where to cut. Okay, and up here I can use my ruler and my guide so I know where to cut. Oh, I was a little off on that one. There we go. And now I can delete this end. And this part here, this was my original boundary. Well, I just needed it for the, the layout and stuff. And do I want to make another vector? Well, why not? Let's copy this to a new layer and call this our style profile cut boundary. And I'm going to make this bad boy like a light aqua. Okay. That way what I can do is I can turn off that style layer. Oops, no I can't. These, let's move these over to the proper layer. Let's select that one and that one. And let's move it over to that profile cut boundary. And now I should be able to, well, you son of a gun, you. This one didn't move. Move over. Move over. Alright. Now I can turn off the styles. So now I can take this, since this is a copy here, I can cut the vector right here on this intersection. This will make sense in about 2 seconds, guys and girls. I can cut the vector. And cut the vector. What that'll allow me to do is I gotta cut it at this end. I was like, wait a minute now, what didn't I do? I didn't cut it at this end. Cut the vector. Okay. Now what that'll allow me to do is delete this and delete that. All right. So if my V cut along these two lines, which it did, and remember I need to be offset from those lines 0.0722, and we put the offset in the the actual profile cut. Well, I can't offset because I have to cut right on the line on these end parts here. So before I join these together, I need to offset these two outward by 0.0722, and I need to delete the originals and like offset. Oh, dadgummit. One went the right way, the other didn't go the right way. So let's take and change the start point on that one right here. Make that the start point down there. What that does is it changes the direction of the line. Now I can go ahead and offset these outward at 0.0722. I'm going to delete the original. Okay. Now I can take and select this, and I can join with a straight line 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Oh, don't you tell me you're not joining. You better join. Let's do one at a time. This one and this one. Join with a straight line. Bam. Okay. We can hide the guidelines. That's one of the things that's throwing y'all. It's throwing me off. Let's hide the guidelines. There we go. All right. So now we're going to follow it all the way around. Select this one and join with a straight line. We're going to come over here. Join with a straight line and join with a straight line. Okay. This is going to be my profile cut. My final and last profile cut. So we're going to do a profile toolpath, 3/4 of an inch thick, 1/4 inch end mill, outside of the line, and again we would put tabs in, but I'm not going to put tabs in just to show this this part. Final outer profile, and let's give it a name of style so we know what it is. Style. I think it's only one T, but I got two in there. But and it is a 0.25 end mill. And let's calculate that toolpath. And let's cut that out. Okay. So if we look at our part here, we should have, let me get it turned kind of, so we should have our nice chamfer on the outside of the both sides cuts. On the inside where the V carve is, should be a nice chamfer, and then we've got a straight cut because the chamfer for the other side is on the corner blocks, the rails. Now, something you got to keep in mind, something you got to keep in mind. Our internal corners, we've got 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to have the radius of the router bit. Okay, we're going to have the radius of the router bit there. It's not going to be a straight cut. So you are going to have to do a little chisel work to clean up those inside corners so you put those parts together. All right. So we've got our And this is the same part. You can just carve this twice, you know, for the two styles. So once again, here's our styles. Okay, let's reset the preview. And let's look at our rails. And let's preview those toolpaths. Okay, and let's we got to do the back side. So let's kind of transition over to the back side, and let's preview that toolpath. And so this will be our styles. And we can have a nice frame. And of course we can size the rails or the styles any size we want. I've got this just under, you know, I've got it at 24, but the actual part itself, if we go back into, let's turn off the styles for a moment. Turn the rail boundary on. That rail boundary, that part is about 23, a little under 23 and a quarter, you know, overall length and stuff. But we've got, you know, let's take and organize our cuts here. So let's get our rails all together. Rail. And let's rename this one while we're here. Let's do it right. This is our rail chamfer cut. And then our final outer profile. And then we have our style, V-carve pocket and the V-carve for the Celtic knot. We have the half flap joint. We've got the style chamfer, and then we have the final cutout. So let's look at our, you guys don't need me to keep showing you over and over and over again, but let's cut this out. Let me cut the back side real quick. All right, so once again, style, and this can be flipped, you know, 180 degrees. So we got the top and the bottom. We only need to draw the one part out. And so we've got our style, or our rail, should I say. Let's call it our rail. Let's call it what it is. And then on the back side, the style. Now, we've got to make one quick adjustment. Let's go ahead and let's preview the style. And then there's one vector, one very important vector that we got to create, and that's the rabbit around the entire back side for the frame, right? For the frame. So let's preview the rail, and then let's create it, and then we'll call it a day. Now, we're going to pause before we create that final rabbit. Once again, we're at a pause point. And there's our half flap. We're at a pause point, and we're going to answer some questions. Okay, let's see here. Correct styles on the top, rails on the side. Yep. Leanne, could you just design one rail in one style but cut two of each? Yeah, absolutely, because it doesn't matter which way it's flipped. You just flip it 180 degrees. Don't forget the back rabbit. Thank you, Jared Rippert. Thank you. William, the corners and rails seem to be the same height. The corners and rail seem to be the same height. Yes, it would be. When these two parts snap in together, everything is going to be flush across the top. So the corners are not going to be standing prouder than the top of the rails. William, when everything snaps together, it's going to look like this. When everything, let's reset our preview. Let's go into our 3D view here. Let's see here, preview the visible toolpath. Let me do my inside cut. That's my outside. Oh, profile 4 and 5. Preview those visible toolpaths. So when everything is assembled together, the corner blocks and the stiles and the rails will be the same level all the way across the top. They're going to snap into one another. No, the corners aren't higher. They're flush. They're flush. Nope, they're flush. You could, I mean, if you wanted to pocket down the whole sides or something, make them a little thinner, you could have it to where they're standing proud. That would probably look good too, as well, also. Could I explain tabs? Yes, and we got to do our rabbet and our alignment pinholes. Let's go back to our two parts here. So tabs, ladies and gentlemen, when we are doing an outer profile cut, we've got clamps or double side tape or hot glue holding this part, but when this part gets cut loose, it can move around. So tabs, if we add tabs to the toolpath, they only really need to be about 1/4 inch wide, and in this case I'm going to go 1/8 inch tall. Oops, too many decimal points. 1/8 inch tall. You click on edit tabs, and then you're going to decide where we want to put some tabs. So I'm going to put one here, and one here, one here. And what this does is when I calculate this toolpath, let's reset back to a final view. When this part gets cut out, it keeps a small, in my case, 1/8 inch piece, 1/8 inch wide and 1/8 inch deep. It keeps a small piece uncut, so that part is still held in place. So it doesn't, because if it gets cut loose with no tabs, that part could shift and trap the bit. Could cause the bit to get trapped, which could cause bit breakages or losing position. The part could actually get flipped out of the center here. It could actually get flipped up and flung. In cases I've never, unless it's a really small part, it's not going to fly far. It's just going to, jump up and stuff. But you never know. You got a router traveling 24,000 RPMs. I mean, anything can happen when that bit catches. So the tabs is small parts on the back side. It cuts all the way through, and it leaves these small little areas uncut, so that part is held in. And the reason why when I create the toolpaths is without tabs, when I'm showing you guys, is because without tabs I can delete this waste material by double clicking on it, but with tabs I can't. So it would delete the whole thing. So I just don't show it with tabs, but you want to have tabs. So this would be the tabs for the bigger part, And if I were doing on my profile cut for my style, then let's turn on the style vectors. And I would come in and add tabs again, about a 1/4 inch wide and an 1/8 inch tall. Edit tabs, and somewhere I would not, don't do it on your half laps, you know, your joinery, you know, somewhere on the side of your part. And you know, 4 tabs is sufficient. 3 would actually be sufficient as well. 2 also, but 4 is secure. And so we reset the preview, and if we were cutting that other part out, then of course we would have our tabs. And you just take a little razor knife or X-Acto knife and you cut the tabs and you sand it flush, and you know, that's it. Let's see here. No, great question, Leanne. I need to do tabs anyway. You know, I need to show you guys every aspect of this stuff. So glad you asked about the tabs. Peter Hearn, just a suggestion. If you bevel the edges where it meets the corner blocks, it might hide any small gaps or height problems. Let's take a look. Let's see here. Let's grab this, and this. And let's preview all of that. Okay. Peter, are you referring to on this inside cut right here, on the inside or outside would it be, you know, over the half laps, where the 2 parts come together? You're talking about beveling that? Because there's a bevel on the other part, and if I bevel this, then my 2 pieces will not fit properly. Even right now, because of the radius of the router bit, I have to chisel and clean these 2 corners up to straighten them out. But those 2 parts have to fit square to one another. If I put a chamfer on there, then because it's you know, if I put a chamfer on there, then I'm gonna end up with a double chamfer on the part. But is this the area you're referring to about a small chamfer? This is a flat piece, and my mortises are a flat piece, and when they come together on the top part of the other part, so you guys got a visual of this right here. Let's move here. So let's get a visual of this. Okay, now mind you, we got corner cleanup to do right here, little corner cleanup. But all right, so a flat part. Now let's reset this to a blank board, and let's look at the rail part. Bless you. And for this, I am going to take the tabs off, guys, so I can delete the waste material for a minute. Rail outer profile cut. I'm going to take the tabs off for a second. Okay, let me get my, let me turn on the other side and get the half lap cut. Okay, let me get this in position. Bear with me a second. Bear with me a second. I lost control there. Let's flip that friggin' thing like this. Slide down. Okay, so we have that flat area here. You can even see a witness line. I got to change that. I got to get rid of that witness line. So I got to offset a little bit more inward. But anyhow, we have that flat area where those two edges come together. And if we turn this over, oh shoot, hold on, I lost it. On the other side of our cut, our chamfer is going to wrap right around into the chamfer on the stiles. And then this piece here is going to have the chamfer on the other side of the cut right here. But those two edges would come straight together. I do not know how it would look, Peter, honestly, if I did a chamfer on that end. I know there's a possibility it could hide some gappage or whatever, but it's going to create kind of a double chamfer look. Let me know your feedback on that. You know, based on what I just showed you, let me know what your thoughts are. Because it could possibly create a double chamfer look, and you'd have a V right here, kind of a V groove in the middle. But I'm not sure. I don't know. I'd have to check it out. Let's see here. Wayne, how do you get the solid color mode on 2D so you can see the color where the tool is cutting? Great question. So in Vectric 8 and 8.5, down on the bottom underneath the tool pass, down on the bottom you have three options, and one of those check boxes is solid, and you can check that and you'll get that, you know, that cut, that look. You can get that solid view. If you know, if the solid is not checked, then you kind of get the wireframe view, you know, those arrows and lines. But with solid view checked, you get the solid view. Well, in version 9, they moved that tool up to the top view bar here. And one, you have toggling the 2D drawing visibility for the toolpath on and off, so I can turn that toolpath on and off, the visibility of it. Even though it's checked in the toolpath list, I can hide it. But I can also toggle between wireframe or solid, showing where that router bit's going to cut. I like using the solid view because it lets me know, like, I can see where on my lines and stuff, I can see where, how close I am to the boundary, if I'm offsetting past the boundary and things like that. So like on this boundary here, on this half lap, that would be the rail half lap. You can see the cut, you know, it's showing you the router going right up to the cut and things. You know, so I like the solid view. But also the one thing I like about it is it's showing you where that router bit is cutting, and it shows us that here, you know, we get a radius cut versus that square cut because that bit can't fit up in that corner. So that's what I like about the solid view on the 2D view, where you can see where the bit's cutting. That's important, especially when you're doing something like inlays and things. Let's see here. Yeah, what size of alignment pin do you use? I use a 1/4 inch shelf pin, metal shelf pin, a 1/4 inch metal shelf pin. Now you can use dowels and stuff, wooden dowels and all, but sometimes I've had problems where the wooden dowel was a little swollen. Had to do a buttload of sanding, and then of course, you know, to get the dowel down to the right size, and it was a lot of fiddling. And then of course, if I sanded too much, then it was a sloppy fit. So I use a 1/4 inch, you know, shelf pin dowel pin, metal dowel pin. And speaking of that, speaking of dowel pins, let's get those in and let's get this last bit done. Let's wrap this up. So let's go back into our top view here. Let's go into, we got to create our rabbits. You rascally rabbit. Got to create our rabbits, and we've got to create our shelf pin flipper alignments, holes. All right, let's start. Since we got the style up here, let's turn on all the style vectors. There's nothing on that one. Let's see what that one is. All right, I actually don't need the actual 3D cut on. I'll just turn that's the Celtic knot. All I need are these vectors on here. Okay, so On the top side here, this is where, well, let's turn the 3D on just so we can get the full effect here. All right, so we've got our parts here for our, there's one more part not turned on. Not that one. Rail. Okay, that's good. All right, so for this, let's say if I were cutting it out of this board, I am flipping along the x-axis. I do want things to be centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up drawing 3 circles. I do use a 1/4 inch dowel pin. Let's turn off, I got a rail turned on there. Let's turn off that. So pick a spot, any spot on this, and we're going to have a 1/4 inch diameter. I'm going to mirror that, making sure that it's absolute centered. Let's align it first, make sure it's absolute centered on the material, which it is. Now I'm going to mirror that horizontally to the other side. And I also, so I know there's only one way to flip this, I'm going to create a third. I'm just going to hold down my control key and I'm going to drag a third and I'm going to snap it right about there, center. And the third one is not 100% required, or necessary, but it does help with, keeping your orientation as to which way you flip this so you don't flip it backwards or upside down and things. So with this, since I am using a 1/4 inch end mill, I'll use a drilling tool path, but if I was using an undersized bit for the alignment pin hole, then I would do it as a pocket cut. But in this case, it's going to be a drilling operation for me. I'm going to be cutting all the way through my material, plus a 1/4 inch into my waste board. Hit equals, and that's going to be 1 inch. And I'm going to be using my 1/4 inch end mill, and I am going to use pecking. I want the bit to come down, up, down a little further, up, down a little further, up, because I want it to pull that out. If I don't use pecking, that bit is going to drill right straight down that 1 inch. And that's a little bit too much on the bit. It kind of heats it up really fast. So I'm going to retract. Now we can retract above the height of the cut before it, that previous cut, or we can retract above the starting cut depth. And I like to pull it all the way out, a small amount. I'm only retracting about 20 thousandths of an inch above my material, but it's enough to get that bit out of there and pull out all that debris and stuff. My peck depth based on my bit and everything and my parameters, it's going to do 1/8 inch peck at a time based on the pass depth of the bit. If we look at the bit information, the bit is a pass depth of 1/8 inch. So that's what my peck depth is. This is going to be my alignment pin. This is going to be my style alignment pins. And it's a 0.25 end mill. Let me clean up my name here. The reason why I use underscores, we don't like spaces in file names. Folder names, spaces are okay. File names, you try to want to avoid them. All right, let's click calculate. It's cutting through the material, so make sure we use a waste board. Well, we know that because we're cutting through. And let's reset our preview. And let's get this board back into full view here. So we would be doing our alignment pins, but what did I just do? To be honest with you, I want to do the alignment pins on the back side because we got to cut the rabbet. I always recommend doing the back side first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. I'm going to move my alignment pins while they're still selected. I'm going to move them to the other side. Let's flip over to our back side here. And I'm going to recreate that toolpath. And again, once again, style, alignment, pins. And it's going to be, again, a 0.25 end mill. Okay. No suitable vector. Make sure you select your vectors there, Haas. Talking to myself. Alright, calculate. Cutting through. So we'll get that calculated. It's going to be on the back side. We'll do that. And that toolpath can be done first. Can be done last. Can be done whatever you want to do. But it's going to be done. And so that's for the style board. Remember now, this is, you got to use your imagination a little bit. There's 2 different boards here. Or technically 4, but we've got our 2 styles are going to get cut out of 2 different boards, and our 2 rails are going to get cut out of 2 different boards. And so we're using our alignment pins. Now, if you decide you want to use a shorter board because of the length of the style, be sure that you move your alignment pins in closer, on the ends and stuff. If not, you need to use the board that you've got calculated. All right. Okay. So we've got that, but now while we're on the back side here, let's go ahead and let's create our rabbit. We got to have our rabbit. So this is the fun part. We got to draw the vectors for the rabbit real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go back over to the front side and work off the front side. And if I'm not mistaken, this was my chamfer line right here. It's my chamfer line right there. It's also my profile cut line and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm going to draw a rectangle. I want to be a little past this vector, but for right now, I'm going to snap to it. Now my rabbit, if we look at the other design and we go to the back side of the other design, that rabbit cut, let me turn on the rabbit. That's my keyhole. Keyhole vector, center profile. Rabbit boundary. Of course, it's the one that's named rabbit boundary, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So if I looked, my rail is here. Okay, this is the vector for the rail. So that distance from here to here, if I take a measurement, and I'm going to do a vertical measurement, oh, that measurement is from here to the inside of my rabbit, a 1/2 inch. It really doesn't need to be that wide, but okay. Knowing that, let's go ahead and go back over to our part here. All right, so I'm going to draw a rectangle. And I'm going to go, I'll go a 1/2 inch. I'm going to go a 1/2 inch. And I need to stretch this out, get it all the way to where it belongs. Now, when this part, I'm going to go a little bit past because I want a nice smooth area here. Now, my part, when that corner comes in, when this other piece, let me draw a rectangle to represent the other part. Let's pretend that this is my corner block, you know, coming down, right? When I cut that 1/2 inch rabbet in it, those two pieces, you know, when I cut that rabbet in that part there, you know, those two pieces should come together and that rabbet should be nice and open. Okay, so for the stiles, with this vector here, I'm going to move it to the other side, because remember, we're cutting on the back. And it doesn't matter what side I'm going to be putting in. Remember, we're drawing one part for two pieces. We just rotated 180 degrees. With this, I am going to have some corner cleanup when I put the two parts together. There is going to be some chisel work. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I could do a dog bone fillet or something like that, but let's leave it alone. Let's go with that and go with a pocket cut. And I want my pocket, it's a 1/2 inch wide, and I'm only going to go... I don't know. It kind of depends on the mirror that I'm going to use or the frame and all. So let's call it 1/4 of an inch deep right now. Let's, you know, and you're going to go deeper, you know, as deep as you need for your piece that's going in there. But let's go 1/4 of an inch deep. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill, and this is going to be my stile rabbet. Babbit, my stile babbit. My style rabbet, and it's going to be a 0.25 end mill. Let's hit calculate. Okay, so let's preview this cut, preview the visible toolpath. Okay, let's flip it over and preview the other style parts so we can see it all in its whole glory. All right, now the thing I've got to look at, you see here what happened here. My rabbet on the other side kind of took the material away where my tabs would be. So I most likely end up moving those two tabs. I'll most likely end up moving those two tabs on that side to, you know, the ends. Oops, I don't need one up there. And recalculate that toolpath, because that rabbet would have cut them away, and I don't want that. Good question. Leanne, hold on. We'll take a look at that and see. I don't believe so, but we'll take a look at that and see that question. Let's see here. Let's do that alignment pins in our rabbet. Got to think about this. That part is going to snap in to the other part. Yes. Yes. Leanne is correct. I need to go out a ½ inch more. Ba-dum-bum-bum. Alright, if I hold down my shift key, I can pull that out and snap to that. Holding my shift key allowed it to pull both sides at the same time. So let's recalculate that toolpath. Okay. Smart, good going, good going. Okay, so this is going to be my style with its rabbit and everything for some kind of pocket or something to sit into. The depth is going to be based upon you, but also you got to remember on that ½ inch out, we've already milled down for the half lap 3/8 of an inch. So there's not much meat left right here in these areas and things. So there's not a lot of meat left there because of that half lap. So we got to be mindful about that with that rabbit on the backside, the depth of that rabbit. All right, so let's now reset the preview. Let's turn off all the style toolpaths. Let's turn on all the rail toolpaths, or layers, should I say. Okay. Okie dokie. So on the back side here, our parts are coming in, snapping in, bam, bam. We're going to, on this piece here, this is my rail part. Rectangle tool, rectangle tool, rectangle tool. Snap out of it, Laney. I'm gonna snap to this side. I got to think about this corner offset right here. This gets milled away too. So on this, oops, let me change the size. It's got to be a ½ inch, not 3/4. Oh. Unlink the XY so I can change that. All right, on this part here, I need to, my half lap's coming in. I really need to extend into that. Because on my rail, I need to extend just a little bit past that. to get a nice clean cut so I don't get those round radiuses. But I've got this corner block right here, so my pocket needs to be out here. Make sure I'm passing that as well. All right. Now let's create that tool path. That's going to be on the back side. It's going to be a pocket cut, quarter of an inch end mill. We're going to call this rail rabbit. And calculate. Alright, let's preview this. So we got our rail half lap and our rail rabbit. Let's preview the visible toolpath on the back side. Oh, alignment pins. Hold on a second, we gotta get alignment pins in here. Okay, stand by just one moment. We gotta get some alignment pins in here. Now on this for the alignment pins, I will not have a third alignment pin, and I would draw on this part here. It doesn't need to be, you know, out in the corner. I've got some waste area here, so I'm going to come in and mirror that. Doesn't matter really the placement where I put it, so I'm going to mirror that across the job center. So when I flip, I have that alignment pin. This one will be gone. Create that drilling tool path. This is my rail. Almost there, guys. We're almost there. All right, so we've got our, let's preview that cut, the alignment pin. All right, so we would flip that board, bam, bam, and then we would do the top side cuts. All right, I'm still getting a flat, getting a little bit of a flat mark right there. So my bit didn't travel that far past that corner. So let's change that vector. Let's recalculate that. Oops, wrong one. Okay, let's take a look at what we got going on here. So we've got our rail, let's flip it over. We've got our rabbit, quarter-inch rabbit, nice clean cuts. And then when our style comes in and snaps in, the big thing is we got to figure out on the style, we got to make sure that when that style pops in, we got to see what that distance is to that rabbit edge. It should be a 1/2 inch, but we've got to kind of measure. So let's take a quick measurement from this point from this point to here, if I measure vertically from this point to my rabbit right there, 0.8758. Okay, 0.8758. Remember that number. Alright, so let's go in here and let's turn off some rail stuff real quick. And let's turn on some styles. Oops, had the wrong layer active. Let's move that. Rail rabbit. Vector. Turn that visibility off. Alright, so when this part comes in, and it sits inside that rabbit, it's sitting right up tight. Remember, we just had a measurement of 0.8758. If I take a measurement from here to the end of my rabbit, I'm short. So my rabbit would be short. So I need to come in 0.8758. So let me close this. Let me snap to here. And let me create a new line going positive 0.8758. Create a new guide. And that's what I need to pull my rabbit out to. Holding your shift key down so I can just pull it out and snap to there. And then recalculate that toolpath. Do you understand why we did that? Because when that part fits in there, this rabbit's got to intersect with that 90-degree corner on the other part. Okay. All right. So all in all, guys and girls, hopefully you got this. Let me take these guidelines out of the way, and let's turn on some front side vectors here and stuff. So we basically created two parts that we're going to cut twice in a sense. Each of them going to get cut twice to create all four frame pieces. We don't have to cut it out of a big panel. So this is option number one when you're making your frames. Half lap joinery is going to be the best part of the joinery for this, because it doesn't, you don't have to worry about mitered corners, any of that stuff. The half lap joinery is going to be the best option in this case. If there's another option that you think would be better, let me know for sure in the Facebook comment sections of this video link, and we'll discuss it. So we got the two parts. So option number one, cutting the parts out individually, or option number two, cutting the entire frame out as a full-on whole panel being cut and milled out and things. So out of a solid panel, cutting it out. Now, out of the solid panel, that might be an ideal situation for like smaller frames and all. But if I wanted these to be bigger, you're just scaling the size, guys. If you, however long you want your rails to be, however long you want your styles, and let's turn this around properly. So we're calling it what it is. However long you want your rails to be and how long you want your styles, you would just scale that up accordingly. And right now, as a frame, in this case, it is, falling just under 24 by 18. The profile cut, is cutting just under that 24, so it's about 23 and some change and stuff. So the part is running around 23 and a quarter, a little over 23 and a quarter by 17 and a quarter, for a panel. I'm going to be sending you, let's turn off the small corner knots. There we go. I'm going to be sending you the, oops, I got a couple things on that shouldn't be on. Bear with me a second. Stand by. Original frame layout. Well, son of a gun. Where's that sucker at? I got some extra vectors in there from the other models. But anyhow, I will post both Vectric files, the full panel frame and the individual rails and stiles. I will have all of your layers nice and organized and renamed, all of your tool paths organized and renamed. No matter if you're getting files from me or anyone else, do not ever take a tool path for granted. Be sure to open these programs up in your software and recalculate these tool paths based on your tool settings and things. Don't ever take a tool path for granted. You can feel confident with me that I'm running pretty much the defaults that I always recommend to you guys and girls to run. But again, even though it's coming from me, don't ever take a tool path for granted. Don't, always question, and, make sure you double check, recalculate if you must, and resave. I will send over the Vectric, not the Vectric, but the Vector DXF files of the couple of Celtic knots and things. I do have some other designs. I'll post them as well. They will be posted in the Facebook group. They should be posted in the Facebook group by tomorrow afternoon. For all of you, we're not done. We're going to answer some questions before we go, but I want you to know I did post in the Facebook group Friday the 30th and Sunday the 1st. Digital Wood Carver will be closed. We will here at the call center at here at the office here. We will also be closed. It'll be my first time to have some time off, and so for those 2 days we will not be taking any calls or texts. So be sure to reach out to us on Saturday. We will be open on Saturday the 31st. We will be open Saturday, and of course tomorrow as well and all, but Friday we are going to be closed. Now let's go, before we wrap up and say goodbye, let's take 5 minutes and answer some of the other questions. Leanne, you were correct about extending it out. We actually had to extend it out just a little bit further than the 1/2 inch. Let's see here. Jared, the style on the bottom of the half lap, you need to go past the corners. Thank you. Yes, you're exactly right, Jared. To account for the rabbets needed on the rails. Yes. Could you almost opt to make a lap part, to make the lap part skinnier to avoid messing up the rabbet? Or will that not be meaty enough for stability? I mean, you could make the half laps thinner. You just want to make sure that the two parts, when they come together, everything is flush. So if you're doing a 3/8 inch on one, you're doing a 3/8 inch cut on the other. It's for that 3/4. If you're going to shallow it up, you can shallow it up. Just make sure that everything matches, appropriately. So it doesn't have to be 3/8. Because you would have to shallow it up if you're going to do a deeper rabbet for a thicker whatever that you're putting this frame around. So you'd have to shallow it up anyway, but you got to make sure when those two parts get together that the top surface is flush, right? On the top surface flush. So if you make one part thicker, the other part's gonna have to be thinner or something. You know what I mean? You got to make sure those two parts fit together flush. For the 4 parts, would you put a keyhole in each piece? You know, that's a good option, Wayne. I mean, we could put a key. I would definitely put a keyhole in the 2 rails. That way I had a choice of if I wanted to hang it upside down, which it didn't matter which way to run it. If I'm going to hang the part as a landscape or a portrait, you know, then yeah, I mean, why not put it in all 4 pieces? So if that part is going to be hung landscape or portrait, then I'd want to have the option of having a keyhole on those 2 parts as well. So why not? Just remember now, don't cut too deep with your keyhole because you'll want to cut through the front of the part. So yeah, you could put the keyholes on all 4 sides. David, William, you know, like William said, you know, think 1 rail, 1 style would do it. Yes, exactly. And great way to look at it, William, because if you're going to hang it portrait, if you're going to hang it landscape, you only need a keyhole on the rail and a keyhole on the style. You don't need it on all 4 parts. So William, good call on that one. That's exactly correct. If one did on 1 each, would you not have 4? Well, no, David. If you did 1 of each, you would opt to not make the keyhole toolpath. You wouldn't run the keyhole toolpath for the other 2 parts. If you you know, I think if I'm understanding you, David, let's say that we draw out 1 part for the rail and 1 part for the style, and we're going to be cutting these out twice, and I got a keyhole on the back. Well, I can just run all the tool paths, and then I would have 4 keyholes. Or I could opt to not run 2 of the keyholes on 1 of the rail projects and 1 of the style projects, you know, so you can just opt to not run that file. Let's see here. Did you have a class to finish the wasteboard we had started a while ago in SketchUp? If not, any way we can finish it? Yeah, Wayne, no, we have not had a class, and we have not revisited that wasteboard that little clamping wasteboard and stuff that we started drawing a while back in the live feed in the Facebook group. So we can absolutely revisit that as a class. We can definitely revisit that as a class and get that project finished up and out there in the field. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for your time tonight. Hopefully, this was not a confusing class. Hopefully, you kind of understood the approach and the concept behind what we were doing. We are working with a lot of vectors. There's a lot of layers. There's a lot of things going on. This is where layers comes in very, very helpful to kind of hide things, turn visibility off and stuff like that, change colors so it doesn't get so overwhelming and confusing. But hopefully it was an informative class, and it makes you look at the next time you're doing some kind of decorative frame or some kind of project that requires joinery, how you would approach the drawing of it or the joinery of it or whatever the case may be. And half lap joinery in this case was a fitting part. All right, I want to thank you. I hope you have a fabulous Easter weekend. Good Friday and Easter Sunday, whether you work, whether you go to church, whether you take time off, I just hope you enjoy yourselves. Maybe make a little bit of sawdust, and I will be back Monday We won't be available Sunday. Remember, we're going to be closed Friday and Sunday, but I'll be back Monday for y'all. And we'll be back with another class. And we're going to kind of go back to, we're going to basic it up a little bit, but we're going to do a nice project. But we're just going to kind of, we do have some newcomers coming in. And so we're going to kind of, we're going to be revisiting a lot of basic stuff. But I'm not sure what the title is for the class yet. I have no clue. So we'll have to figure that one out. Thank you all for the nice words, and good night. Oh, yes, Baron. April 1st is April 1st. Oh, my goodness. That ought to be interesting.